Marcus Hayes stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office on the 42nd floor, watching the Atlanta skyline glow in the afternoon sun. At 42 years old, he had built something most people only dreamed of, Hayes Technologies, a cybersecurity empire worth $3 billion. His name appeared on Forbes lists. His opinions shaped industry standards. His signature could move markets. But none of that mattered half as much as the framed photograph on his desk. An 11-year-old girl with bright eyes and her mother's smile, holding a science fair trophy like it was made of gold. That was his daughter, Bridget. That was his whole world. Marcus was a man who had learned to carry grief like a second skin. 8 years ago, his wife Kendra had been singing along to the radio on Interstate 85 when an 18-wheeler crossed the median. One moment she was laughing, her voice filling the car with warmth. The next moment, she was gone. Bridget had been only 3 years old, too young to fully understand why Mommy wasn't coming home, but old enough to feel the emptiness that followed. For 8 years, Marcus had raised Bridget alone. He turned down business opportunities that required extended travel. He declined invitations to galas and networking events. He left the office at 5 o'clock every single day, no matter what deal was on the table, because Bridget had homework and stories to tell, and a father who refused to let her grow up feeling abandoned twice. They had built a small, perfect world together, Saturday morning pancakes with too much syrup, bedtime stories where he did all the character voices, dance parties in the kitchen when dinner turned out terrible. Bridget was his anchor, his purpose, the reason he got up every morning and kept building something bigger than himself. He never thought about remarrying. He was content. They were complete. Then he met Vanessa Montgomery at a charity gala he couldn't avoid. She was elegant, poised, and spoke 3 languages fluently. She laughed at his jokes and seemed genuinely interested when he talked about Bridget. She was a consultant for nonprofits, she said, someone who believed in giving back and building community. She seemed kind. They dated for 6 months before she moved into the penthouse. Bridget seemed to like her, or at least tolerate her, which Marcus took as a good sign. Another 6 months passed, and they married in a small ceremony in Savannah. Bridget wore a white dress and threw rose petals down the aisle, her smile bright enough to light the whole room. Marcus thought he had finally found a way to rebuild what grief had stolen. A complete family, a new chapter, a second chance at happiness. He should have known better. He should have paid closer attention. He should have trusted the part of him that noticed how Vanessa's smile never quite reached her eyes when she looked at Bridget, or how her voice changed when she thought he wasn't listening. But Marcus was a man who believed in second chances and fresh starts, and he wanted so badly to believe that everything would be okay. 2 weeks after the wedding, Marcus received a call about a merger in Singapore. The deal was worth $200 million, and the clients had specifically requested his presence. He didn't want to go. Something in his gut told him to stay home, to be there for Bridget during this transition period. But the board insisted, and Vanessa assured him everything would be fine. "We'll be just fine," Vanessa said, her hand on his shoulder, her smile practiced and perfect. "You go build your empire. I'll take care of our girl." On his 3rd night in Singapore, Marcus received a video call from Bridget. Her voice sounded strange, careful, measured, like she was choosing each word with precision. "Daddy, when are you coming home?" "Thursday, princess. Just 3 more days. Is everything okay?" Bridget glanced off camera, then back at the screen. Her pause lasted half a second too long. "Yeah, everything's fine. Vanessa's been really nice." Something about that word, nice, sent a chill down Marcus's spine. He asked to speak to Vanessa, who appeared in the frame with her makeup perfect and her smile practiced. "Marcus, darling, we're having a wonderful time. I'm teaching Bridget how to be a proper young lady." The call ended shortly after. Marcus stared at his phone, that uneasy feeling gnawing at him. He almost canceled the rest of the trip right then, but he had no real proof of anything wrong. He was probably just being paranoid, projecting his fears onto a situation that was perfectly normal. So he pushed the feeling aside and focused on the merger. That decision would haunt him for the rest of his life. Part 2. The cracks begin to show. When Marcus finally returned to Atlanta that Thursday evening, he expected Bridget to come running into his arms the way she always did, her face bright with excitement, her stories tumbling out faster than she could tell them. Instead, she walked toward him slowly, her movements careful, almost hesitant. And she had lost weight, enough that her school uniform hung loose on her small frame. Marcus knelt down to meet her at eye level, concern tightening in his chest. "Have you been eating, baby girl?" "Yes, Daddy," Bridget said quietly, her eyes dropping to the floor. "Has Vanessa been feeding you good meals?" Bridget nodded, but she wouldn't look at him. That was new. His daughter had never been afraid to meet his eyes before. Vanessa appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel, her expression casual, too casual. "She's become such a picky eater lately. You know how preteens can be. I've been trying everything, but she barely touches her vegetables." Marcus looked directly into Bridget's eyes. "Is that true? You're not eating?" Bridget glanced at Vanessa, then back to her father. "I guess I haven't been that hungry." A cold feeling settled in Marcus's chest. It wasn't just the lack of appetite that bothered him. It was the way Bridget looked away when she spoke. The way her words seemed forced. The way she kept glancing at Vanessa, as if checking for approval before she said anything. That night during their bedtime routine, Marcus held Bridget longer than usual. "You'd tell me if something was wrong, right?" he asked gently. "Of course, Daddy," Bridget whispered. "Promise. Promise." But when Marcus tucked her into bed, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. Her fingers had small cuts on them, not paper cuts, but deeper wounds, like she'd been handling something sharp or rough for hours at a time. The next morning he asked about them. Vanessa was quick with an explanation. "Oh, she's been helping me with a craft project. You know how clumsy children can be with scissors." Bridget sat silently at the kitchen table, staring down at her cereal, saying nothing. Marcus wanted to press further, but Vanessa changed the subject smoothly, asking about his trip, talking about her plans for the day. And Bridget just sat there, quiet and small, barely touching her food. Over the next few days, Marcus watched more closely. He didn't see anything overt, no raised voices, no obvious cruelty. But Bridget was changing. She was quieter, more withdrawn, like she was shrinking into herself. The spark that used to light her up from the inside seemed to be fading. When he asked her directly if she was okay, if something was wrong, she always answered, "Yes, Daddy." But the words were hollow, lacking the warmth and confidence they once held. Marcus began to doubt himself. Was he being overprotective? Was he projecting his fears onto Vanessa, who had given up her own life to be with him? Everyone said that blending families took time, that there would be an adjustment period. Maybe this was normal. Maybe he just needed to be patient. But late at night, when he couldn't sleep, Marcus would lie awake and think about that video call from Singapore, about the way Bridget had paused before saying nice, about the cuts on her fingers, about the weight she'd lost, about the way she wouldn't meet his eyes anymore. And he would tell himself he was being paranoid, that everything was fine, that Vanessa was exactly who she appeared to be, kind, patient, loving. 3 weeks later, another business trip came up. Tokyo, 2 weeks, a contract worth $400 million. The board said his presence was mandatory. The Japanese clients had specifically requested him. Marcus didn't want to go, but he felt trapped between his responsibilities as a CEO and his instincts as a father. The night before he left, he stood in Bridget's doorway and watched her brush her hair in front of the mirror. "If you need anything," he said, "anything at all, you call me. I don't care what time it is. Promise me." "I promise, Daddy." "And if Vanessa does anything that makes you uncomfortable, anything, I need you to come to me. No hesitation. You understand?" Bridget's lips twitched like she wanted to say something, but the words didn't come. Instead, she just nodded. "I'll be fine, Dad, really." Marcus almost canceled the trip right then. His instincts were screaming at him to stay, but he had installed security cameras throughout the penthouse years ago, a standard precaution for a man in his position. If anything went wrong, he would know about it. He would see it. He could handle it from Tokyo if he had to. What Marcus didn't know was that Vanessa had found every single camera in the penthouse. Every single one, except for one hidden inside an antique clock in the hallway, a piece Kendra had bought from an estate sale in Charleston years ago. Marcus had installed that camera himself privately and never mentioned it to anyone. Not even his security team knew about it. That clock had been recording everything. Part 3: When the Mask Falls. The moment Marcus's plane left American airspace, Vanessa's entire demeanor changed. She stood on the balcony of the penthouse, her phone pressed to her ear, her voice sharp and cold in a way Bridget had never heard before. "He's gone," Vanessa said into the phone. "We have 2 weeks. Make sure the money transfers to the offshore account by Friday." Bridget stood frozen in the hallway, hidden in the shadows of her bedroom doorway. Her heart pounded so hard she thought Vanessa might hear it. Money transfers. Offshore accounts. The words were too big, too adult for her to fully understand, but one thing was crystal clear. Vanessa was stealing from her father. Bridget pressed her back against the wall, barely breathing. She needed to tell her father. She needed to warn him. But how? Vanessa had taken her phone, her iPad, her laptop. Every device Bridget owned was locked away in Vanessa's office. The penthouse landline required a security code Bridget didn't know. She was completely cut off from the outside world. Vanessa ended the call and turned around. Her eyes locked onto Bridget's, and for a moment neither of them moved. Then Vanessa smiled, a cold, calculated smile that made Bridget's blood turn to ice. "Come here," Vanessa said softly. Bridget's feet refused to move. "I said come here, now." With shaking legs, Bridget walked forward. Vanessa crouched down and grabbed Bridget's arms, her manicured nails digging into the skin hard enough to leave marks. "Let's get something straight," Vanessa hissed. "Your father is gone for 2 weeks. In that time you will do exactly what I say when I say it without question. Do you understand?" Bridget nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "Good, now go to your room and change. There's a uniform on your bed." The uniform was gray, industrial, and 3 sizes too big. It smelled of bleach and mothballs, and when Bridget put it on, the rough fabric scratched against her skin. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the girl staring back at her. When she emerged from her room, Vanessa was waiting with a mop and bucket. "The marble floors in the east wing need cleaning, all 68 tiles. Use this toothbrush for the grout lines. I want them spotless by dinner." "But I have homework." The slap came so fast that Bridget didn't see it coming. Her head snapped to the side, stars bursting across her vision, her cheek burning with pain. She had never been hit before, not once in her entire life. "Did I ask about homework?" Vanessa's voice was ice. "Did I ask you to speak at all?" Bridget couldn't speak. She could only stare, her hand pressed to her stinging cheek, tears streaming down her face. "Start cleaning. You have 4 hours." Bridget dragged the bucket down the hallway, the mop too heavy for her small frame. The east wing stretched endlessly before her, a massive corridor leading to guest suites Marcus rarely used. The marble floor gleamed, already clean, but Vanessa didn't care. This wasn't about cleaning. This was about control. The first hour passed slowly. By the time Bridget finished just 3 tiles, her arms were screaming in protest. 65 tiles still lay ahead of her. The grout lines were even worse, kneeling on the cold, hard marble, scrubbing with a toothbrush until her fingers went numb. Vanessa checked on her every 30 minutes, her high heels clicking down the hall, her eyes cold and critical. "You missed a spot. Do it again." By the time dinner came, Bridget had only managed to finish 20 tiles. Her hands were raw, her nails cracked and bleeding, but Vanessa just looked at her work with disgust. Unacceptable. You don't eat until it's finished. Bridget's stomach growled painfully. Please, she whispered. I'm really hungry. Then work faster. Bridget worked through the night, her body shaking with exhaustion. By 2 in the morning, she could barely hold the toothbrush. Her knees were bruised, her uniform soaked with sweat and dirty water. And that's when she heard footsteps, heavy footsteps that didn't belong to Vanessa. A man appeared at the end of the hallway. Tall, mid-30s, dressed in expensive clothes. He looked at Bridget with something between pity and disgust. "This the kid?" he asked. Vanessa appeared beside him, sliding her arm through his. "That's her. Pathetic, isn't it? Marcus thinks she's some kind of princess." The man, Bridget would later learn his name, was Derek. Chuckled darkly. "How much longer are you going to play house?" "Until the accounts transfer. Another 10 days, then we disappear. Mexico, remember, the villa you picked out." Derek's gaze shifted back to Bridget. "What about her?" Vanessa glanced at Bridget like she was nothing more than a problem to solve. "Boarding school. One of those strict places in New Hampshire. By the time Marcus realizes what happened, we'll be gone and his accounts will be empty." Bridget's blood turned to ice. They were going to steal everything from her father, and they were going to send her away. "You going to tell your daddy about this?" Derek asked, his voice mocking. Bridget's body trembled, but she stayed silent. "Answer him," Vanessa snapped. "No," Bridget whispered, "I won't tell." Derek smiled cruelly. "Smart kid, too bad she has to learn the hard way." They walked away, their laughter echoing through the hallway. Bridget remained where she was, frozen, tears streaming down her face. She waited until their footsteps faded, then crawled back to her room, not caring about the unfinished tiles. She had to find a way to contact her father. She had to warn him, but Vanessa had taken everything, every possible lifeline. Bridget was trapped in her own home, a prisoner with no way out. And she was only 11 years old. Part 4: Surviving the Storm. The next morning, Vanessa woke Bridget at 5 in the morning. "The kitchen needs cleaning. The chef is coming at noon, and I need everything perfect." Bridget's entire body ached. Every muscle screamed in protest as she pulled herself out of bed. She could barely stand, let alone clean an entire kitchen. "Can I please call my dad?" Bridget asked, her voice barely a whisper. Vanessa's laugh was cruel. "Your dad doesn't want to hear from you. Why do you think he's always traveling? He's tired of taking care of you. That's why he married me, to deal with you so he doesn't have to." The words hit harder than any slap. Bridget wanted to scream that it wasn't true, that her father loved her, that he would destroy Vanessa if he knew what was happening. But doubt crept in like poison. Maybe Vanessa was right. Maybe her father did want a break from her. Why else would he leave so often? Why else would he trust Vanessa so completely? The kitchen was enormous, all stainless steel and imported tile. Bridget scrubbed counters, mopped floors, cleaned out the refrigerator, organized the pantry. Her hands, already damaged from the night before, began to bleed again. She wrapped them in paper towels and kept working, afraid of what would happen if she stopped. Vanessa stood in the doorway sipping coffee, watching with cold amusement. "You know, your mother would be so disappointed in you. All that potential, wasted on a spoiled little brat." "Don't talk about my mother," Bridget said, the words escaping before she could stop them. The coffee cup shattered against the wall next to Bridget's head. Hot liquid splashed across her arm, burning. She cried out, clutching the injury. "You don't get to talk back to me," Vanessa hissed. "Clean that up, and if you ever mention your mother again, it'll be worse than a coffee cup." Bridget cleaned the broken ceramic with shaking hands, tears streaming down her face. The burn on her arm throbbed. She wanted her father so badly it physically hurt, an ache in her chest that wouldn't go away. The days began to blur together. Each morning brought new tasks, impossible expectations, and cruel punishments when Bridget failed to meet them. She was forced to serve Vanessa's friends at lunch, wearing the gray uniform, keeping her eyes down, moving silently like a ghost. One woman with kind eyes pulled Vanessa aside, concerned, but Vanessa smoothed it over with practiced lies about character building and teaching responsibility. At night, Vanessa locked Bridget in different rooms: the laundry room, a closet, once even the bathroom. No bed, no blanket, just cold tile floors and the smell of cleaning products. Bridget would curl up in a corner and think about her father, about Saturday morning pancakes and bedtime stories, about the life that felt like it belonged to someone else now. By day 5, Bridget had stopped hopping for rescue. She moved through the penthouse mechanically, completing whatever task Vanessa assigned, eating the scraps she was allowed, retreating to whatever space she was permitted that night. The little girl who had thrown rose petals at a wedding just months ago had disappeared. In her place was a shadow. Derek came and went, always at night, always bringing updates about the money. Bridget listened when she could, gathering information like weapons she might someday use. They were stealing millions, transferring it carefully to avoid detection. Marcus had given Vanessa access to certain accounts after the wedding, trusting her completely. She'd use that trust to create a web of theft that would take weeks to unravel, by which time she and Derek would be long gone. "What if the kid talks?" Derek asked one night. Vanessa's voice was confident. "She won't. I've broken her. Look at her. She barely speaks anymore." It was true. Bridget had retreated so far into herself that she'd almost forgotten how to be loud, how to take up space, how to demand anything. Fear had taught her that silence was safer than speaking, that stillness was better than action. But deep inside, beneath all the fear and pain, something else was growing, a small ember of anger that Vanessa's cruelty kept feeding. Bridget thought about her mother. Kendra had been fierce, protective, strong. She wouldn't have given up. She would have fought back. Bridget decided she would fight too. She started small, hiding pieces of bread for later, finding moments to rest, memorizing every detail about the money Derek and Vanessa discussed. She didn't know how any of this would help her, but she collected it anyway, storing it in her mind like treasure. And then she remembered something her father had told her once, during a conversation about security. There was a camera hidden in the hallway clock, the antique one her mother had bought years ago. Nobody knew about it except him and Bridget. It was their secret, a fail-safe he'd installed himself. That camera had been recording everything. Bridget's heart began to race. She didn't have to save herself. The camera had already done it. Her father would see everything, every slap, every cruel word, every moment of suffering. She just had to survive long enough for him to come home. 2 more days. Her father would be home in 2 more days. She could survive 2 more days. Part 5: The Breaking Point. Day 9 brought Vanessa's party, a celebration of the money they'd stolen and the new life waiting for them in Mexico. Vanessa's friends arrived at 7 in the evening, dressed in designer clothes, carrying expensive wine, filling the penthouse with laughter and casual wealth. Bridget served them, passed around trays of appetizers, refilled wine glasses, cleared plates, all while wearing the gray uniform, her hands bandaged, her face gaunt. Some of the women noticed. Their eyes lingered on Bridget's injuries, on how thin she'd become, on the fear in her eyes, but none of them said anything. Maybe they believed Vanessa's lies. Maybe they just didn't want to get involved. One woman cornered Bridget in the kitchen, younger, maybe late 20s, with kind eyes. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" Bridget wanted to scream the truth, wanted to beg for help. But Vanessa stood in the doorway, watching, her expression warning Bridget to stay silent. "I'm fine," Bridget whispered, "just tired." The woman touched Bridget's bandaged hand gently. "Those look serious. Have you seen a doctor?" "I'm clumsy," Bridget recited the lie Vanessa had drilled into her. "I fall a lot." The woman didn't look convinced, but Vanessa swept in before she could ask more questions, pulling the woman away into conversation. The moment was lost. Bridget had had a chance, a tiny chance to get help, and fear had kept her paralyzed. The party continued until midnight. By the time the last guest left, Bridget could barely stand. She'd been on her feet for 18 hours, denied food or water, moving constantly. Vanessa found her collapsed in the kitchen, asleep against the refrigerator. She kicked Bridget awake, hard enough to leave a bruise on her ribs. "Get up. You've made a mess. Clean it before you sleep." The penthouse looked like a disaster zone. Wine stains on the carpet, food ground into the furniture, dishes everywhere. Bridget cleaned until 4 in the morning, her eyes barely able to focus. When she finally finished, Vanessa inspected the work and found a single wine glass Bridget had missed. She threw it at the wall, shattering it. "Clean it up, and since you're so careless, you can sleep out here tonight, on the floor where you belong." Bridget cleaned the broken glass and curled up on the living room floor. The city lights filtered through the windows, and she stared at those lights, trying to remember what freedom felt like. One more day. Her father would be home in one more day. Day 10 brought a new level of cruelty. Vanessa woke Bridget at dawn and took her to the master bathroom, the very bathroom where this nightmare would soon reach its climax. "This bathroom is disgusting," Vanessa announced. "You're going to clean it, every inch, every corner, and you're going to use this." She handed Bridget a toothbrush. "The whole bathroom," Bridget's voice cracked, "with a toothbrush." Did I stutter? The bathroom was massive, marble floors, glass shower, double vanity, separate toilet room. Cleaning it properly with normal supplies would take hours. With a toothbrush, it would take all day. Bridget knelt on the cold marble and began to scrub. Hours passed. Her knees went numb, then painful, then numb again. Her fingers cramped around the toothbrush handle. The bristles wore down to nothing, and Vanessa brought her a new one, laughing at Bridget's tears. "This is what you are," Vanessa said, crouching down to Bridget's level. "This is all you'll ever be, a servant, a nobody. Your father is going to abandon you just like your mother did." "My mother didn't abandon me," Bridget said through gritted teeth. "She died." "Same difference, she left you, and soon your father will too, and you'll be alone forever." The words were designed to break her, and they almost did. But then Bridget thought about the camera, the one hidden in the hallway clock. Her father would see everything. She just had to survive one more day. Part 6, The Return. Marcus Hayes sat in the Tokyo conference room, surrounded by executives speaking in rapid Japanese. But he couldn't focus on the deal, couldn't concentrate on the numbers. For 11 days, an uneasy feeling had consumed him, a feeling that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with his daughter. He tried calling Bridget every day. Vanessa always answered with reasonable excuses. She's at school, she's doing homework, she's asleep. Each excuse made sense in isolation, but together they formed a pattern that made Marcus's instincts scream that something was wrong. On day 12, the deal collapsed. The Japanese executives had found a better offer. Marcus should have been devastated, but all he felt was relief. Relief that he could finally go home. He didn't tell Vanessa he was coming. Something told him that showing up unannounced was crucial, that surprise would reveal whatever truth was being hidden from him. The 14-hour flight felt like an eternity. Marcus's mind raced with worst-case scenarios, imagining every terrible possibility. He told himself he was overreacting, that everything was fine. But he couldn't shake the image of Bridget's face on that last video call, the careful words, the hesitation before saying nice. The plane landed at 6 in the evening. Marcus went straight from the airport to the penthouse, his luggage still in the car. He used his key to enter, taking the private elevator up to his floor. When he stepped into the penthouse, the first thing that hit him was the silence. No music, no television, no sound of life, just heavy, oppressive quiet. Marcus set his briefcase down and called out, "Bridget, Vanessa." The silence stretched too long. Then a crash echoed down the hallway, followed by Vanessa's voice, sharp, cruel, nothing like the woman he'd married. "Pick it up, every single piece. And if you cut yourself, don't bleed on my floor." Marcus's heart stopped. That wasn't Vanessa. That was someone else entirely, someone capable of terrible things. He moved silently down the corridor, his pulse pounding. When he turned the corner into the master bathroom, the sight that greeted him made his blood run cold. Bridget was on her hands and knees, wearing a torn gray uniform he'd never seen before. Her hair hung in unwashed strands. Her hands were bandaged and bleeding. She was carefully gathering shards of broken glass, her movements slow and painful. Standing over her was Vanessa, arms crossed, face twisted with disgust. Then Vanessa saw Marcus. Her eyes widened briefly before she masked it with a forced smile. "Marcus, darling, you're back early. How was your trip?" But Marcus didn't hear the question. He was too focused on his daughter, too focused on the scene before him. "Bridget," he whispered, his voice breaking as he knelt beside her. "What's going on? What happened?" Bridget looked up at him, her eyes wide with fear and something else, a strange determination. She opened her mouth to speak, but Vanessa stepped forward, placing herself between Marcus and his daughter. "You shouldn't be here," Vanessa said, her voice low and dangerous. "You're interrupting." Marcus looked at her, everything falling into place. The woman he'd trusted had betrayed him in the worst possible way, and now it was time to take control. He turned back to Bridget, his voice softer now, filled with urgency. "Bridget, I need you to tell me everything, right now." And as his daughter finally spoke the truth, Marcus realized that the nightmare was only beginning to end. Part 7, Justice Revealed. The transformation was instant. Vanessa's expression shifted from contempt to surprise to manufactured warmth in less than a second. "Marcus, darling, you're home early. We weren't expecting." "What the hell is going on?" His voice was ice, controlled but barely containing the rage beneath. "Oh, this," Vanessa gestured casually at Bridget. "She's been helping with some chores, character building like we discussed." "We never discussed this." Each word was a hammer blow. "Bridget, come here, now." Bridget stood slowly, glass still in her hands. She was shaking so hard she could barely walk. Marcus caught her before she collapsed, feeling how light she'd become, how fragile. The daughter who'd been healthy and strong 2 weeks ago was now skin and bones, trembling in his arms. "Daddy," she whispered, "I'm sorry, I tried to be good." Something broke inside Marcus. This wasn't discipline. This wasn't tough love. This was systematic torture of a child who had no one to protect her. His child, his responsibility, his failure. Vanessa was still talking, still spinning lies. "She's been difficult lately, acting out, and I thought tough love would." "Shut up." The command was so cold, so final, that Vanessa's mouth snapped shut. Marcus pulled out his phone, his hand steady despite the rage burning through his veins. He opened an app Vanessa didn't know existed, the one connected to the hidden camera in the hallway clock, the one that had been recording everything for 12 days. He pressed play. The bathroom television screen flickered to life. Vanessa's face appeared, her voice crystal clear. "Your father is gone for 2 weeks. You will do exactly what I say when I say it without question." The slap, Bridget's small body crumpling, Vanessa's cruel laughter. Marcus fast-forwarded through the footage, showing clip after clip. The gray uniform, the forced labor, the denial of food, Derek's appearance and their discussion of theft, offshore accounts, their plan to abandon Bridget in a boarding school while they fled to Mexico with millions of dollars. Every moment, every crime, every act of cruelty, all of it captured in high definition with perfect audio. Vanessa's face drained of color as she watched herself on screen, her perfect mask cracked, revealing panic beneath. "Marcus, I can explain." "Explain to the police." He was already dialing the phone to his ear. "And my lawyers, and the FBI, since you committed wire fraud across state lines." She lunged forward, desperation making her reckless. "Please, it wasn't supposed to go this far. Derek, he convinced me." You hit my daughter. Each word was measured cold. You starved her. You enslaved her in her own home. You stole from me. You planned to abandon her. There's no explanation that fixes this. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Marcus had texted his head of security before confronting Vanessa, had already forwarded all the footage to his legal team and the Atlanta Police Department. He'd learned from building a cybersecurity empire that evidence must be preserved and distributed before confrontation. That justice requires preparation. Vanessa dropped to her knees, tears streaming down her face. I love you. Please don't do this. I made a mistake. We can work through this. Marcus looked at her, this woman he'd trusted with his daughter, his home, his heart. You didn't make a mistake. You showed me exactly who you are, a monster who hurts children for profit. The police arrived 7 minutes later. 4 officers, 2 detectives, 1 district attorney Marcus had called personally. They arrested Vanessa first. She screamed and fought, clawing at the officers. You'll regret this. I'll take everything from you. We have 12 days of video footage, Marcus said calmly. We have bank records showing the theft. We have witnesses. You've already lost. They found Derek hiding in the master bedroom closet, trying to delete files from his phone. He was arrested on charges of conspiracy, fraud, extortion, and child abuse. As Vanessa was led away in handcuffs, she screamed one final time, You'll regret this. I'll destroy you. Marcus held Bridget close, his hand on her head, protecting her. You already tried. You failed. The door closed behind the officers. Finally, it was quiet. Marcus carried Bridget to the guest bathroom. He ran a warm bath, carefully removed the gray uniform, and gently washed her hair while she cried. Silent tears at first, then great heaving sobs that shook her entire body. He treated her wounded hands with antibiotic ointment and proper bandages, noting every injury, every bruise, every sign of abuse. I'm so sorry, baby girl, he whispered. I should have known. I should have seen it. I should have been here. You came back, Bridget said, her voice raw. You saved me. I'll always come back for you, always, and I will never, ever let anyone hurt you again. Part 8: Healing and Home. The legal battle began immediately. Marcus hired the best attorneys in Georgia, the kind who made their living protecting children and destroying those who hurt them. The evidence was overwhelming. The video footage, the bank records showing nearly $10 million stolen, the testimony of Bridget's doctors who documented her injuries. Vanessa and Derek tried to fight it. They claimed the videos were edited, that Bridget was lying, that Marcus had fabricated everything out of spite. But the evidence was irrefutable. The videos were authenticated by forensic experts. The financial crimes were documented by the FBI. Bridget's injuries were confirmed by medical professionals. 6 months later, they were both convicted. Vanessa received 8 years for child abuse, fraud, and conspiracy. Derek received 12 for those same crimes, plus additional charges related to theft and his prior record. The offshore accounts were recovered, every penny returned, along with penalties Marcus donated to charities supporting abused children. Marcus sold the penthouse immediately. He couldn't bear to stay in the place where his daughter had suffered. They moved to a house in Buckhead, a beautiful property with a big backyard and space for Bridget to heal. He had a treehouse built in the oldest oak tree, a place where she could escape and feel safe. He cut his travel schedule by 70%, turned down board positions, restructured his entire life around being present for Bridget. Business mattered, but not as much as his daughter. Nothing mattered as much as his daughter. Bridget started therapy twice a week with a specialist in childhood trauma. The nightmares came first, screaming herself awake, convinced she was back in that bathroom with a toothbrush and broken glass. Then the anxiety, the hypervigilance, the fear that every kind gesture was a trap. Slowly, painfully, she began to heal. She learned to eat normally again, to trust that food would always be available. She learned to sleep in a bed without fear. She learned that not all adults would hurt her, that her father's love wasn't conditional, that she was safe. The physical scars faded. Her hands healed, though faint marks remained. The bruises disappeared. Her weight returned to normal. She started smiling again, carefully at first, then with more freedom. The emotional scars took longer. She struggled in school, unable to focus, flinching when teachers raised their voices. Marcus enrolled her in a new school that specialized in children who'd experienced trauma, where the staff understood her triggers and helped her navigate with patience and care. She made friends slowly. A girl named Maya who liked the same books, a boy named Jordan who made her laugh. Small connections that reminded her the world held goodness alongside cruelty. Marcus was there for every therapy session, every nightmare, every panic attack. He learned about trauma responses, about healing, about how to support a child who'd been through hell. He learned patience he didn't know he possessed and strength he'd never needed before. On the one-year anniversary of Vanessa's arrest, Bridget and Marcus sat on the back porch of their new house, watching fireflies dance in the summer darkness. She leaned against him, her hands fully healed now, her smile genuine. "Daddy." "Yeah, princess. Thank you for believing me, even when I couldn't say anything." Marcus kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, grateful beyond words that she was here, that she was healing, that they'd survived. "I'll always believe you, and I'll always protect you. That's what fathers do." She smiled, really smiled. The kind of smile that reached her eyes and lit up her entire face. The smile he thought he'd lost forever. "I know," she said simply, "I know." And in that moment, under the Georgia stars, surrounded by fireflies and the sound of crickets, they were finally free. Free from Vanessa's cruelty, free from fear, free to rebuild their lives with truth and trust and love. The nightmare was over, the healing had begun. Marcus made a promise to himself that he'd never break again. His daughter would always come first. No business deal, no relationship, no distraction would ever matter more than Bridget's safety and happiness. He'd failed once. He would never fail again. Bridget fell asleep against his shoulder as the stars wheeled overhead. Marcus held her close, listening to her breathe, grateful for every second. They had a long road ahead, more healing to do, more challenges to face, but they'd face them together. Father and daughter, survivor and protector, family. And that was enough. If you were in their place, what would you do? Tell me in the comments. Your opinion matters. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and become a part of our Unbroken Grace Stories community. Where are you watching from?